Hello there, and I hope you all are getting ready for Thanksgiving. I'm going to have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Me and the family are going out to eat because the kids are out of town. But today we're going to talk about in perpetuity. I just finished on a podcast interview, and this was a huge topic of discussion. So I was like, this needs to be this week's YouTube video. So we're going to be talking about in perpetuity and a reason that you're probably not thinking of about why it is so important to never give any brand rights in perpetuity. We're going to get into it, but first, I just want you to know this applies to influencers. This applies to UGC creators, any type of creator, anybody doing brand collaborations, brand deals. If you're creating content for someone else, this applies. And there's a million things that we can chat about when it comes to influencers, UGC creators, any type of creator contracts. Like there's a million things, but this specifically is going to be for contracts and discussing in perpetuity. If you have any other topics, any other specific provisions around influencers or UGC creators that you want me to cover, drop a comment below. I'll probably be doing a few weeks of this type of content, this type of videos, because it's just a huge topic of discussion. UGC creators are booming right now. They're popping up left and right, which is wonderful. Influencers always, they're booming. And I want to make sure that you all have the right tools and the right education to make sure that you are not setting yourself up for failure. I've seen a lot of creators, and I'm going to just use creators as a blanket term for influencers and UGC creators, any other type of creators. So I've seen a lot of creators sell themselves short. And we can talk about pricing all day long. That's another topic of discussion. But specifically, I want to talk about in perpetuity. Brands are going to ask for this, as they should. I mean, as a business, as a brand, as a creator, you should always be asking for what's in your best interest. And then it's up to the two of you to come to a mutual agreement. So a brand, of course, will most likely ask for in perpetuity. I personally think you should never give it. There are certain situations where it might be okay, but I'm going to give you the reasons why you should never give it and why and basically you're going to realize, oh gosh, I didn't even think about that. That was what happened on this podcast interview. Because there's a number of reasons why you don't ever want to give in perpetuity, but she was thinking about one reason and I covered another reason. She was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. So here it goes. Number one, money. If you give somebody rights in perpetuity, that means they can use the video over and over and over for life. And right now, in the nicest way possible, you might be a nobody. So you might be just starting out. You may have like a small following and you have this brand that wants to pay you $1,000 for a video. Banking, great. Now, you may think that's wonderful right now, but what about in a year from now, if your brand has quadrupled 10x, 100x, you're now selling yourself short. And that brand can still use that content even though you're much bigger than when you first signed the contract. So now you're a much bigger brand. And as a creator, you are a brand, you're a personal brand. And because you're now much bigger, they're getting so much more value out of that content. And this is not the only reason. This is the actual reason why the person I had the podcast interview with, what she was thinking about. I'll get to my big reason in a minute. But things you need to realize, they're asking for perpetuity, which means they can use it forever. And you don't want to give those rights because you may be smaller now, and in a year from now, you could be a lot bigger. So what I suggest doing is when you give a brand your rate, or if they say what their budget is, and then you agree to something and they send the contract, that's typically when they're going to throw the perpetuity in there. And you go back and say, oh, I maybe you point out all the things you want changed in the contract, but what you say is, the rate that I gave you was for usage rights of 1 month. And whether they want in perpetuity exclusivity, in perpetuity usage rights, whatever it is, the rate that you give a brand should only be for 30 days or 2 weeks, whatever it is. But the initial rate I always tell clients to provide the brand is for no more than 30 days, whether it's usage rights or exclusivity. If they want more exclusivity or if they want more usage rights, then you multiply that rate by however many months they want. And I highly suggest not giving any usage rights past 12 months. And I really don't suggest it for longer than 3 months. And typically how I tell people to word it is ask for, tell them you can give them this rate for 3 months, and then you can negotiate for more rights later. You can renegotiate the deal. And so you give them 3 months. I mean, you can do 12 months, but a lot can happen in a year. A lot can happen in 3 months. So you want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success in order to have enough money coming in. Because the thing is, let's say you tell a brand $500 for one video, 1 month of usage rights, 1 month of exclusivity. They're asking for perpetuity, which means they can use it forever. Absolutely not. If you give them 3 months, then you say, hey, $1,500 for 3 months. You can use it for 3 months, exclusivity for 3 months. A lot can happen in 3 months, but you don't know what could happen. Maybe you actually get canceled in 3 months. You've already got your money. Okay. But in 12 months, you could just be everywhere now. You could be 100x your audience, 1,000x your audience. Like, you could have millions and millions of followers. And if that's the case, you don't want to have told them, so 12 months times 500, is that 6,000? If they paid you 6,000, but now you have millions of followers, and in even 6 months later, you would normally be charging 5,000 for one video. Like, you're just selling yourself short, and you're really hurting your own brand. So limit the amount of exclusivity, usage rights. Like, there's so many things that need to be negotiated in these contracts. And like I said, there's a million things that we can talk about. I'll cover them slowly, but just understand, like, in perpetuity, absolutely not, never. And do not give it for more than 12 months. You can always renegotiate later. If they want to continue using it, they're just going to have to renegotiate with you. Now, that's the reason number one, because the money. You want to be making more money. But what you're not thinking about, and this actually throws so many people off, and they're like, oh my gosh, you're right, I didn't even think about that. It's because, let's say this brand wants in perpetuity, and you're a young baby creator, you just don't know, which I'm not like faulting you, you just don't know. That's why you're watching this, so you're educated, and you don't make these mistakes that I've seen so many creators make. But let's say, okay, you're working with this hair care brand. They want to pay you $1,000 for a video, and you're like, gold, absolutely. And they want it in perpetuity, and you're like, you don't even read the contract, you're like, done. Or maybe you do, and you're like, I don't even care, I'm getting $1,000. But they also want, and even they may not even ask for exclusivity for any amount of time. Maybe they just want exclusivity for 30 days. So you're a baby creator, let's say you have 50,000 followers. Well, then even 2 years later, maybe you now have hundreds of thousands or millions of followers, and you have a brand, another hair care brand, that wants to pay you $50,000 for one video, and they want 2 weeks of exclusivity. Guess what? You can't give them any exclusivity because somebody else, another hair care brand, has lifetime of exclusivity with you. That is the number one reason why you never, ever, ever want to give in perpetuity rights to any brand. Unless they're going to be paying you millions of dollars, you don't even want to consider in perpetuity rights, because quite frankly, nobody's going to pay you millions of dollars when you're a small creator to have lifetime rights. Most likely not. So you just have to keep looking at your future and know that you're going to build a bigger brand. You're going to be growing your audience. You're going to be raising your rates. And so you don't want to lock yourself into rates from when you were a baby creator, because not only are you going to be selling yourself short and making much less money, but you're going to be shutting yourself out from potential deals in the future, because you cannot give exclusivity to a brand when another brand in the same industry has your video in perpetuity. Now, there are ways to get around this. Like, you can go back to the brand and buy the rights back from them, or try to negotiate something with them. And maybe they've never even used it anymore. So they're just like, yeah, like, we won't even use this anymore, and have them sign a contract for that. Like, there's ways around it. But what if they see that you're this huge creator now and they're like, fuck that. Like, we're absolutely going to be using this, and there's no amount of money that we will take to stop using it. These are all things you got to think about. And I know as a creator, you're just so excited because you're making money, having fun, creating videos. Like, how fun is that? Like, we get to do this. But you have to realize what your potential could be. And in order to protect yourself in the future and protect what you have now, you have to make sure you're being educated about these things. So make sure you subscribe, like, share with your other creator friends. I have a couple of other podcast episodes already on this, so check out the podcast. You can go back I think it's a couple months ago, and I've done some UGC videos, influencer episodes. I'm going to be doing more in the future. Let me know if you have specific questions of things you want me to cover. And then, of course, if you need an attorney, we have the Legalpreneur membership. It gives you all access to your own attorney. I know this is huge for creators because you have so many questions and you don't know how to negotiate these contracts. That's exactly what we're here for. So $199 a month, $19.99 for the year, all access to your own attorney, unlimited emails, a phone call every month, document review, all of our contract templates, like everything that you need. So check it out. Don't sell yourself short. Make it. And I think next week I'm going to talk about pricing, because that was another topic that we covered in this podcast interview. And I know it's a lot about mindset shifts, but that's what we're going to cover next week, about actually knowing how to raise your rates, when to raise your rates, and just making those mindset shifts. Because as a creator, we're kind of just making it up as we go along. It's such a new industry. And so we get to make the rules. And you may think that you're in a great place because you're getting this deal with this brand because you are taking $100 versus somebody that wanted $5,000. But guess what? That's only hurting the next creator, and that's actually only hurting your future. So we're going to talk about it, because we're going to change the creator industry and make sure that you guys are making what you are worth. So make sure you like, share, subscribe, do all the things, and I'll see you next week.